Religion and the evolution of political thought. Between 1450 and the present, Europe experienced a profound shift in how people justified political authority. Early modern rulers grounded their power in divine sanction and classical hierarchy, but new theories of government shaped by the Reformation, scientific revolution, Enlightenment, and modern revolutions increasingly emphasized human reason, natural rights, and popular sovereignty. However, even as secular ideas grew, traditional religious foundations persisted. The idea that morality, justice, and legitimacy came from a higher power continued to influence political philosophy, law, and national identity. 1. The early modern era, divine right and classical order. Monarchs used religion to justify centralized authority. The divine right of kings asserted that rulers were appointed by God and answerable only to him. Example, James I of England argued that kings were God's lieutenants on earth. This concept merged Christian theology with classical ideas of hierarchy, reinforcing the idea of a natural social order. The Reformation introduced competing interpretations. Protestant rulers emphasized their right to govern without papal interference, linking political sovereignty to divine will. Coexistence. Even as early humanists revived classical civic ideals, most political theories still grounded authority in a religious moral universe. 2. The Enlightenment and the challenge to divine authority. The Enlightenment redefined political legitimacy, moving from divine sanction to rational consent and natural law. But it still retained traces of religious thought. John Locke's natural rights derived from belief in a rational creator who endowed humans with rights. Montesquieu's separation of powers drew on classical republicanism and a providential sense of moral balance. Jean-Jacques Rousseau's social contract replaced God with the general will, but maintained a moral vision of human goodness. Meanwhile, many Enlightenment thinkers became deists, believing in a non-interventionist creator who established natural laws but did not dictate daily governance. Even revolutionary movements like the American and French revolutions used religiously tinged language. All men are created equal, or the cult of the supreme being. Continuity, Enlightenment. Political thought was secular in method but moral and religious in tone. Divine order gave way to natural order. 3rd, revolutionary and 19th century ideologies. After the French Revolution, Europe witnessed a wave of new political ideologies: liberalism, conservatism, socialism, and nationalism that blended secular rationalism with moral or religious legacies. Conservatism defended traditional institutions, arguing that religion provided the moral glue of society and that abrupt change violated divine and natural order. Liberalism promoted individual freedom and equality before the law, but still rested on Judeo-Christian moral values about human dignity. Nationalism often drew on religious heritage, Catholicism in France, or Orthodoxy in Russia, to forge unity. The Papal States' fall forced the Catholic Church to redefine itself, spiritually rather than politically, but papal encyclicals like Rerum Novarum showed ongoing engagement in social and political thought. Transformation. Religious frameworks didn't disappear, they were reinterpreted within modern ideologies that still used moral or divine language to justify political ends. 4. The 20th century, secularism, totalitarianism, and renewal. World wars and totalitarian regimes rejected traditional religion but mimicked its structure, creating political faiths with sacred symbols, rituals, and dogmas. In contrast, post-war leaders and thinkers reintegrated moral and religious principles into politics. The Christian democratic movement in Western Europe combined social welfare with Christian ethics. The Second Vatican Council encouraged engagement with modern democratic values. Later, Pope John Paul II and Pope Francis reaffirmed the Church's global moral voice on human rights, peace, and the environment. Continuity. Even in secular democracies, the idea that legitimate authority must rest on moral principles rooted in centuries of Christian and classical philosophy remains influential. 5. Contemporary legacy. Today's European governments are secular, but traditional moral frameworks shaped by centuries of Christian theology and classical natural law still influence law, ethics, and public discourse. Debates over bioethics, migration, and environmental stewardship often invoke both religious and rational humanist justifications. Political language continues to reflect moral ideals like human dignity, equality, and justice, which originated in Christian natural law thought. Conclusion. From divine right monarchies to liberal democracies, Europe's political ideologies evolved through a dialogue between faith and reason. Even as revolutions and Enlightenment thinkers rejected clerical power, they continued to draw on religious moral principles to define justice, legitimacy, and the common good. Thus, the modern European state is not a rejection of its religious past, but a reinterpretation of it through reason, humanism, and secular law, demonstrating continuity within transformation.